My name is Chloe Parker. I'm 32 years old. And 2 nights ago my parents invited me to dinner in the home I spent years saving to buy, only to serve me the eviction papers I never saw coming. From the moment I turned the key in the lock and felt those familiar oak floors beneath my feet, I believed I had arrived. I pictured their faces lighting up when they saw my grandmother's china set in place. The name cards I'd laminated at work. The centerpiece I'd arranged by hand. Instead, I was about to learn that the people who gave me life had written me out of their own. Before we dive into exactly how they pulled it off, how a real estate attorney father, an HR director mother, and an interior designer sister conspired to lock me out of my dream, I need you to do something. If you've ever felt underestimated by your family, if you believe home should be a place of refuge and not betrayal, hit that like button now, so I know you're with me. Then subscribe and click the bell. Because over the next half hour, you're going to witness a tale of heartbreak, courtroom fireworks, and a salvation that demanded every ounce of grit I had. The stakes were my home, my dignity, and ultimately my peace, and I promise you, this ride will be worth every second. I wasn't always on trial in a Denver courtroom. 10 years ago, I was a freshman, struggling to juggle shift work at a pancake diner and a full load of marketing courses. My parents, Victor and Margot Parker, hovered in the background, proud, in theory, but always ready, with critiques disguised as tough love. Marketing isn't stable. Dad warned over burnt toast. You need a real career. Mom echoed as she polished her corporate ID badge. They never asked how I felt. Only whether I was meeting their invisible benchmarks. I learned to swallow my ambitions to earn their nods. But each time I scored a promotion or hit a sales milestone, their praise felt lukewarm. As though I'd merely done the bare minimum. I wanted more than approval. I needed to prove my worth. So I threw myself into late nights crafting campaigns for Nimbus Tech, spending weekends poring over spreadsheets, and saving every extra dollar toward a house. When I finally stood at the closing table in April 2024, ink drying on a deed held in my name alone, I felt invincible. The stroll up my own driveway felt like crossing the finish line of a marathon no one else even knew I was running. The cherry-red brick bungalow, the mountain vista, and the quiet street lamps, they were mine because I refused to be small. That sense of triumph swelled in me as I arranged a housewarming dinner, inviting only my closest allies, Nora, who was more sister than friend, Clayton, the steady ex who once cheered for me when my own family did not, and 2 others who believed I was finally home. But in the back of my mind, I'd noticed small cracks, my mother borrowing my towels without asking, my sister Izzy unusually interested in how I'd installed the security cameras, even Dad's offhand comment about family property when I mentioned refinancing. I dismissed them as quirks until the night of the dinner. By 6:30, my tablescape was perfect. Grandma's blue-rimmed plates, fresh lavender candles, my signature cobbler cooling in the oven. When the Parkers stepped inside, someone shifted the flowers by a few inches. Margot's fingers brushed the photo wall as if testing it for removal. And Izzy's suede boots, never clean around my house, left faint dust along the polished floors. A prickle traveled up my spine. But I told myself I was being paranoid. I waited for Dad to compliment the hardwood, for Mom to admire the china, for Izzy to praise the lighting. Instead, Dad folded his napkin with mechanical precision, leaned forward, and said, "This is too much house for one person." Mom nodded, eyes flicking to her watch. And Izzy produced a green suitcase, my suitcase, and placed it at my feet. "We packed your essentials," she said in a voice colder than the spring night. The walls of my home suddenly felt like the closing jaws of a trap. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came. My own family had staged a takeover right before my eyes. At that moment, laughter felt impossible. The flicker of the lavender candles mocked me. The fading sunset outside the windows turned blood red in my vision. And I realized this wasn't anger, it was the raw pull of betrayal. Everyone watched as I rose, picked up my phone and keys polished that morning, and laid them gently next to my untouched wine glass. No one spoke. The silence screamed that I had become an intruder in my own life. That night, I parked at a 24-hour station under buzzing lights that hummed like an alarm. Nora sat beside me, offering a thermos of coffee and a shoulder. Over the next hours, I pieced together the web of voicemail from Izzy plotting once she leaves. We move in, emails Dad sent to Redwood Mortgage requesting new co-owners, Mom quietly changing the Wi-Fi passwords. It was a blueprint for erasure. Crafted in whispered phone calls and notarized documents, the people I trusted had become architects of my undoing. And my fight was only beginning. I didn't sleep that night. The gas station lights buzzed above me as I stared at my own reflection in the windshield. At her fingers trembling around a styrofoam cup of stale coffee, this was the first time I truly felt unmoored in my life. Like the ground had given way beneath me, and I was hanging by my fingernails. Beside me, Nora's thermos sat warm, but I couldn't drink. Every sip felt like admitting defeat. Instead, I replayed their faces, Victor's calculated nod, Margot's dismissive glance, Izzy's cold efficiency. They hadn't yelled or slammed doors, they'd plotted a silent coup. And that realization how quietly my world had cracked felt sharper than any scream. By dawn, we were back at my place. Laptops open, on Nora's makeshift legal desk. I found a voicemail dated 2 weeks before the dinner, Izzy's voice. Flat and bored. Outlining exactly how to change locks. Call the bank. Reroute utilities like she was assigning chores. My heart pounded as I imagined that conversation looping in a sleek conference room. Not a kitchen table. Once she's out, don't let her in. Those words weren't family drama, they were corporate strategy. And the woman I knew as my sister sounded more like a CEO plotting a hostile takeover. Next came Barbara Nguyen, the property lawyer I'd Googled in a panic. When she leaned back and said, "You're not the first to experience family fraud," I felt a flicker of solidarity amid my rage. She hammered out a plan, secure the mortgage account, subpoena bank records, catalog every security camera clip. By midday, I had digital forensics showing Victor's forged signature, time-stamped footage of Margot rifling through my drawers, and emails to the lender that weren't from me. Each file was a slap to my psyche, proof that my family treated me as collateral. But with each revelation came a surge of clarity. I was no longer just a victim. I spent the afternoon compiling evidence into folders named with cold precision title, deed, mortgage, fraud, audio, plotting. This ritual of organization felt oddly empowering. Like building a shield from paperwork. My breath steadied. My hands grew less shaky. It occurred to me that their greatest mistake was underestimating how much I valued every comma in a contract. They thought emotion would cripple me. Instead, it fueled me. By sunset, I had drafted an emergency motion, every forged document laid bare, and sent it to Barbara with one terse message: let's go to war. That evening, As I walked Nora home through the quiet Denver streets, I realized how isolated I'd become over the past decade. My parents' constructive criticism had taught me to hide my insecurities, to perform calm even when I was falling apart. I remembered freshman year Chloe, terrified to ask for help, convinced vulnerability was weakness. But now, leaning on Nora's steadfast presence, I understood that asking for one ally didn't make me powerless. It made me a strategist with backup. And the thought of standing alone in a courtroom tomorrow terrified me less than the idea of letting them rewrite my story. The next morning, I parked behind the courthouse. Cold air, stinging my lungs. My evidence packet felt heavy in my bag. But for the first time in days, I felt something solid in my chest resolve. Victor wouldn't see the tremor in my voice, but I felt it vanish as I stepped through the revolving door. I was about to confront the people who raised me on the grounds that I didn't deserve what I built. And with every stride down the marble hallway, I reminded myself this was my house, my life, and I would not leave without reclaiming both. I stepped into the hushed courtroom and felt the weight of every marble column pressing down on me. But I refused to shrink back. My evidence binders were neatly stacked on the defense table, each plastic sleeve holding the forgery. The voicemails. The security footage. Opposite me sat Victor, his face schooled into polite composure. Magos fingers drumming her purse. And Izzy casting sidelong glances as if she could unsee the data I'd laid bare. The bailiff called the case. The judge peered over her notes and asked Victor to speak. He rose smoothly, clearing his throat. Your Honor, I regret the misunderstanding. This was a family matter, handled in good faith to protect our shared asset. His words floated in the air like a bad perfume, familiar but unwelcome. Barbara rose next, her calm voice cutting through the stale courtroom air as she presented each piece of evidence with clinical precision, the forged signatures on the mortgage documents, the time-stamped footage of kitchen drawers opening without my knowledge, the audio of Izzy planning the lock change once Chloe's out. The judge's face betrayed a flicker of shock. Even Victor's composure cracked when Barbara played that voicemail. The judge leaned forward, pen ready, and I felt my pulse in my throat. This was the moment my every fear confronted their every lie. When it was my turn, I walked to the stand. Every step, a declaration that I would not be invisible. I looked at my parents directly, no tears. Just steel in my eyes, and told the court how I'd saved for years. Worked every late shift and weekend to buy that house on my own. I spoke of the pride I once felt, and the betrayal that followed, describing how the home became a stage for their clandestine takeover. My voice didn't waver as I concluded. This wasn't just theft of property. It was an attempt to erase my existence. Silence followed. The hush in the courtroom felt like the calm before a storm. The judge reviewed the documentation, pausing on the forged documents, then swept her gaze across the room. There is sufficient cause for a temporary restraining order, she declared, her gavel tapping like a heartbeat. Instantly, a legal shield enveloped me. My family was barred from entering the property or altering any aspect of the home or mortgage. A sigh of relief escaped me that I didn't know I'd been holding. The air tasted sweeter. Their plan had hit a roadblock, a judicial dead end they could not cross. Outside the courthouse, the late afternoon sun felt like a benediction. Detective Hayes handed me a copy of the order and said, "They'll try to push, but this holds. For now." His reassurance grounded me. But I knew this battle was far from over. My phone buzzed. Clayton's text. "I'm so proud of you." That simple line hit me like a punch of validation. After years of feeling unseen, someone I trusted recognized my fight. I slipped the court order into my bag and took a deep breath. Victory tasted of crisp paper and quiet justice. Back at the bungalow, I unlocked the door to find the place exactly as I'd left it, Grandma's china untouched. Lavender-scented candles, cold. For a moment, it felt surreal, as if I'd stepped into a paused dream. But then the old smart lock flickered red. Someone had tried to override the system again. My heart thundered. This was their next move, technical sabotage. Instead of panic, a slow fury settled in me. They thought legal protection would stop me. They hadn't counted on my resolve. That night, under the warm glow of my desk lamp, I drafted cease and desist letters to Victor, Margot, and Izzy, each meticulously citing the restraining order and potential contempt charges. I added invoices for locksmith services and system audits. Every line was a reminder that I wouldn't tread lightly. With each word, I reclaimed a piece of my voice they tried to silence. The final sentence read, "Cease any attempt to interfere or face full legal consequence." I hit send and felt the first true spark of empowerment in weeks. As I lay in bed, exhaustion tugged at my limbs. But my mind raced not with dread, but with purpose. The walls of my home no longer echoed with whispers of betrayal but hummed with the promise of justice. I closed my eyes, picturing the judge's gavel still ringing, the look of stunned disbelief on Victor's face, and the moment I stood alone, unbroken. Tomorrow I would fortify my fortress. But tonight, I allowed myself a small triumph. They had tried to take my house, and I had stopped them. And that was only the beginning. That morning, while dawn's pale light filtered through my new stained glass window, I began fortifying my home like a citadel. Within hours, a locksmith changed every cylinder to custom high-security locks. A tech specialist reset every smart device and installed encrypted cameras I could access only with my personal token. Even the Wi-Fi name was altered to something nonsensical, so they couldn't guess it by trial. As each layer clicked into place, I felt the walls grow stronger around me because this time, no one would slip past my defenses. By midday, I shifted my focus to their latest Gambit credit line applications made in my name. One bogus department store inquiry had already dinged my score. A phantom credit card approval was in process. I called Experian, TransUnion. Equifax froze every bureau. Then instructed an identity theft specialist to launch a fraud alert. With proofs of forged SSN and IP logs from my parents' address, I not only blocked their attempts but also filed a suppression request to scrub my credit reports. I was no longer reacting to their moves. I was dismantling the ground beneath their feet. That afternoon, Barbara and I met with a local investigative reporter, laying out the evidence: recorded calls, mortgage forgeries, video clips of late-night break-ins. Within 24 hours, Denver Daily Dispatch ran a front-page exposé: local family faces criminal charges after daughter's house theft. The headlines spread through neighborhood social feeds like wildfire. Suddenly, Victor's once esteemed law practice was under public scrutiny. Margot's HR board began questioning her ethics, and Izzy's portfolio website froze under incoming traffic. Turning their private conspiracy into public truth felt like pulling a curtain back on their carefully staged play. They tried to regroup. That evening, Izzy showed up at my door with a fake apology and a box of my grandmother's teacups, trying to curry favor with the neighbors who'd started whispering on their lawns. I invited her in, let her words tumble out, then handed her a printout of the restraining order and said, Our next interaction will be in court. Her face went pale, the first crack in her polished mask. Knowing I refused, even a civilian truce left her stunned. And for once, I watched her hesitate beneath the weight of her own betrayal. The following week, after the criminal complaint was filed with Denver's Financial Crimes Unit, I sat for hours at the evidence, hearing my family's lawyer promising to settle quietly, mine refusing anything less than full accountability. Each testimony I delivered, the moment I realized the locks had changed, the morning I spotted the stranger on my porch, the voicemail instructing them to erase me from the house, built an ironclad narrative that even their counsel couldn't dismantle. When the prosecutor announced formal charges for forgery and identity theft against Victor and Margot, I felt a fierce relief. The law was finally wielded in my favor. That night, I walked through my reclaimed home in silence. The canvas prints, I ordered family friends laughing over board games. Nora's candid smile in front of her agency office hung on walls once draped in my family's commandeered decor. I lit a single lavender candle and sat on my favorite armchair, tracing its worn armrest with a gentle fingertip. They had tried to steal every brick, every memory. But the soul of this place was mine alone, and now, at last, it truly felt like home. In the weeks that followed, formal charges against Victor and Margot Parker rippled through our little suburb like a shockwave. The prosecutor laid out counts of forgery, identity theft, and conspiracy. Each document I'd painstakingly catalogued, serving as irrefutable proof that they'd orchestrated my erasure down to the last keystroke. At the arraignment, Victor's stoic mask finally cracked as the judge read the charges. Margot's eyes brimmed with tears that weren't remorse but fear of consequences. She'd ignited herself. Watching them, led hands cuffed, heads lowered, felt surreal, as if I were witnessing strangers rather than the parents who once tucked me in at night. Yet in that moment of legal reckoning, I tasted a justice I'd only dreamed of, tempered by the bitter knowledge that accountability often arrives too late. Meanwhile, the neighborhood's whispers transformed into affirmations. Mrs. Kavanaugh from next door had every reason to stay silent. But instead, she knocked on my door one afternoon with a jar of her lavender mint jam and a knowing smile, saying, "I'm proud of you, Chloe." Even the barista at my favorite coffee shop offered a free latte, confessing she'd read about my fight online and wanted to show support. I began to realize that by going public, I'd tapped into a collective longing for fairness, for the underdog who refuses to be written out. The community's solidarity became a protective embrace, reminding me that home isn't only four walls and hardwood floors, it's the people who stand beside you when everything else feels stolen. But justice in court boxes and headlines didn't erase the late-night tremors that haunted me when I lay in bed. The first morning I woke without heart-pounding panic. I felt unsteady, like stepping onto solid ground after a long fall. I found myself journaling the moments I'd almost given up: the tearless dinner table, the buzzing gas station lights, the hush of the courtroom before the gavel's verdict. Writing those memories became a balm, an acknowledgement that survival sometimes means carrying scars rather than hiding them. In those pages I discovered an unexpected truth: strength isn't born from victory alone, but from allowing yourself to feel broken first and then rise again. When I look back on the Parker family's betrayal, it no longer feels like a single act of malice, but a series of choices fueled by fear and entitlement. Victor was terrified of losing a family asset. Margot clung to social status, and Izzy craved the spotlight of keeping the legacy. Their motivations were human, flawed, desperate, and painfully relatable. Recognizing this complexity didn't excuse their actions, but it revealed how ordinary people can become architects of cruelty when they prioritize property over person. That realization transformed my anger into compassion for my family's own brokenness. Even as I maintained the boundaries that kept me safe and sovereign, the lessons I drew from this ordeal extend far beyond real estate or courtroom drama. I learned that boundaries aren't barriers but declarations of self-worth, that reclaiming your life often means facing those you love most, and that forgiveness isn't mandatory. Sometimes the greatest grace is to let go without forgetting. I also discovered a universal truth: every person craves validation, but none should accept being erased. In choosing to document every injustice, to fold every paper trail into evidence, I didn't just win a legal battle, I affirmed my right to exist on my own terms. Now, as I walk through my home's stained glass light dancing across the floors I fought for, I no longer see the residual traces of my family's takeover. Only the echoes of my resolve. I've updated the decor with artwork that celebrates my journey, a photograph of Nora and me at sunrise, the original deed framed in mahogany, and a plaque that reads, "Here stands a woman who refused to be invisible." Each piece is a testament to the power of claiming your story, of turning betrayal into empowerment. If there's one thing I hope you take from my story, it's this: you deserve to protect what you build. Whether it's a home, a career, or your own sense of self, don't let silence become complicity. And don't let fear rob you of your voice. If you've ever felt dismissed or overwritten in your own life, I know that the path to reclaiming your worth begins with one-step document. Speak out and stand your ground. Thank you for watching my journey from eviction to emancipation. If you've experienced a betrayal that left you questioning your place in the world, share your story in the comments below. Your voice matters here. Hit like if you believe in boundaries over silence. And subscribe for more true stories of resilience and redemption. Until next time, remember, sometimes the fiercest fight is to simply be seen, and sometimes the quietest victory is the one you claim in your own heart. Story 2. Ian is my name. I finished from law school last month, and I'm 26 years old. At the top of my class with distinction. The ceremony took place in the university auditorium, which was crowded with relatives. People applauding, cameras flashing, flowers and tears, and all the other things you would anticipate from such a significant event. Ian Maxwell, second to last, summa cum laude, was my name. As the audience applauded, I stood, crossed the stage in a dapper blue suit and tie, shook hands with the dean, and held the rolled certificate. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a vacant row close to the front. I had booked my parents' row months in advance. 5 chairs were included. They were all 5 empty. I thanked my instructors, grinned through the applause, and posed for photos with both professors and classmates. But since I already knew they wouldn't show up, I felt numb on the inside. My mom casually mentioned, "Oh, honey, your dad and I were thinking we might skip it." When I contacted her the week before to be sure, the same weekend, "Your brother's startup has a major launch party. Do you recall that seemed a little more pertinent to us?" Vague, contemptuous, and tinged with her typical tone. Her words lingered in the air like smoke. For example, my accomplishments were respectable but unimpressive. Nathan is 2 years younger than me, so we can't be compared. In order to pursue innovation, he left college his sophomore year. This primarily involved working on a pitch deck for an app that I'm still not convinced accomplishes anything and hanging out with Instagram's wealthy youth. My parents have always had a strong, unwavering, and loud belief in him. Whenever I returned home from law school or college, your brother was featured on a podcast. And it was Nathan. Nathan just had a meeting with a San Francisco venture capitalist for a startup incubator. Nathan's team is taking a plane to Austin. Never mind. The reality that he has lost both investor rounds, has not turned a profit, and continues to live rent-free. My parents co-signed the loan while I was driving the Audi. I worked through law school in the interim, studying case law while eating ramen in a one-bedroom apartment I could hardly afford, bartending on the weekends, teaching undergraduates during the final season, and pulling late hours. I had no time to protest. So I didn't. All I did was work. Before I even graduated, I received scholarships, made the dean's list each semester, and got an internship at one of the top companies in the state. When I told my family that I had been offered a clerkship with Judge Harrow, however, they hardly noticed. "Is that like being his assistant?" my mother said. My dad just emailed back a thumbs-up emoji after I passed the bar the first time I took it. That was it. I wasn't shocked when they failed to show up on graduation day. I wasn't shocked. But I was saddened. The fact that they didn't even text was what caught me off guard. Not a single phone call. No. "Well done, Ian." No. "You have our admiration." Not even a week. "Sorry. We were unable to attend." As I watched students put their arms around their parents beneath the auditorium's golden lights, I had a strange mixture of resignation and contempt. After that, I went out by myself, got into my car, and made my way home quietly. I sent thank you notes to every one of my supporters a few days later. My teachers, my study group members, and even my landlord, who waived fines for my 3 late rent payments last year. My family didn't receive anything from me. I worked out what the goal was. Not out of malice. The bar results were then released. I kept my family members in the dark. Not Nathan. Not my aunt. Nor my parents. I didn't make any social media posts. The family group chat was still somehow always buzzing with updates on Nathan's vision or photos of his dog with CEO-esque remarks. So I didn't post anything there. Rather, I informed the firm's mentor, who grinned, gave me a pat on the back, and said, "Welcome aboard, counselor." This was the bit that surprised me the most. He contacted a buddy at the New York Herald who had written a brief item on the year's top-performing bar aspirants. There was my name, my GPA, and my picture. A saying regarding tenacity. Even my record of receiving scholarships and landing a federal clerkship right out of school were cited. It was sent to someone else in my family, but not to me. As I prepared to move downtown, I was packing up my books in my flat a week after the article was published, when I received a knock at the door. The business had offered to pay for my first 6 months. When I opened it, I saw my dad standing there with a folded newspaper in one hand while wearing khakis and a jacket. He was unsure of how to begin the conversation, as seen by the stiff expression on his face. We hadn't seen one another in person for months. He displayed the document. The article was from the Herald. Red ink was used to surround my photo. I remained silent. Leaning on the doorframe was all I did. "How come you didn't inform us?" "Oh," he said. He didn't sound furious. It was perplexed. He seemed to have forgotten each time they had made me feel insignificant. As if he truly didn't understand why I wouldn't tell him about the most significant event in my life. As if the previous 2 decades had never occurred. I just gave the paper a nod. Go ahead, I said. Take a look at the headline. He cast his gaze downward. After overcoming the odds, Ian Maxwell, a first-generation student and top bar scorer, joins a prominent business. He blinked. It's not you. First gen. I interrupted him. Dad. You never arrived. Not for this. Not for anything. Perhaps I had to overcome more than just the odds. His mouth opened a little as if he were about to defend himself. Perhaps. Then he just closed it once more. I observed as he came to the realization that this was more than simply missing a ceremony. All of this was about picking Nathan, minimizing all I accomplished, and making me bear the burden of the world while they lavish attention on someone who was only ever carrying their ego. Before he could say another word, on the kitchen counter, my phone buzzed. To respond, I turned and went inside. He wasn't invited in. I also didn't shut the door. I simply left him standing. The business made the call. My eyes were still on the doorway as I calmly took it up. Hello? Yes. Apologies. Only taking care of something. The following Monday. I'll be there. Once again. Thank you. He was still standing there when I turned around, but his shoulders were hunched. He appeared older than I had recalled. Smaller. When he opened his mouth once again, I knew he wasn't there to defend or dispute. He was looking for the me that bent in the past. When Dad received that disappointed face, the child would soften. No matter how late or unworthy, the son used to long for a pat on the back. But I no longer lived here as that version of myself. I waited for him to say anything that he believed would make things better. Some form of "we're proud" or "we didn't realize it" meant that much was practiced. Rather, it was revealed that your mother had not intended for Nathan's debut to be that way. She simply pondered. I held out a hand. Don't focus on what she intended. I gave you months' notice of the date. You were aware of the steps I had to take to get there. At first, I wasn't even interested in becoming a lawyer. I did everything because I believed that if I did everything correctly, I may finally matter to you. I stopped sleeping. A piece of mine and Summer's pals, attempting to get your admiration. Furthermore, you didn't even text. He twitched his face. You didn't seem to need us. You always appeared to be okay. It hurt more than I thought it would. Since it was accurate, I had always behaved perfectly. In a sense, I didn't shout. I didn't voice any complaints. I didn't snap. When I received socks for Nathan's birthday, and he received a $3 0 drone. When they stuffed my scholarship letter into a drawer and framed his podcast portrait in the corridor, I didn't object. As the self-sufficient son, I portrayed the strong one. I also taught them that my accomplishments didn't need to be celebrated. I was done with that position. Though, I said, I needed you. I simply stopped anticipating you. When a truth is revealed, there is a strange hush that descends, and neither party is sure what will happen next. I saw something shatter behind his eyes for the first time in a long time as he glanced down at the page once more before turning to face me. Not really sorrow, more akin to guilt, like he had fallen into a mirror and not liked what he saw. Shock was layered on top. And then, your brother, he said. The app has been difficult for him. A few investors withdrew. Lately, he has been spending more time in his room. Naturally, you considered him. We reasoned. I interrupted. You have always done that. In front of you. I may be bleeding out. You would still inquire about Nathan's well-being. I didn't take anything back, but it came out harsher than I had intended. The back of his neck was massaged. Now, what can we do, Mommy? When she viewed this piece, she started crying, claimed that we were unaware that you were relocating downtown. You didn't enquire, I said. He nodded slightly. You're correct. A pause occurred. I could sense that it was extending this awkward void left by years-old apologies. Will we be invited to the bar ceremony? He then inquired. I looked at him, without immediately responding because such was the situation. The exam was that, the roads forking. He was making an awkward attempt, but had decades of absence been erased by effort now? Was a single agonizing glance sufficient to get a place at my table? I took a step forward, folded my arms carefully, and gave him a direct look. Do you recall when I won the citywide writing prize at the age of 12? Slowly. He nodded. Yes. I brought the certificate home with me. And you wrote about the Constitution? What were you saying? His gaze fell. That's cute. I remarked. Nathan constructed a go-kart. That's right. My chest constricted as I inhaled. I discovered that I'm only the side story. Even when I win. On that day, I've become your fallback option. And my tale is important now that Nathan is abruptly disintegrating. He didn't answer. He was not required to. I will update you on the bar ceremony. I retreated towards the door after saying that, don't anticipate a front row. Though, with the newspaper still in his hand, he turned to go. His shoulders drooped further than they had when he got there. But he stopped and turned around as he got to the corridor. Ian, you have my sincere admiration. Both of us are. We just had no idea how to demonstrate it. I tied a little knot. It could have been recognition, but it wasn't forgiveness. He took a little step and vanished down the stairway. I leaned against the door and closed it, letting out a breath that seemed to have been held for years. I surveyed the flat, seeing rolled-up carpets, half-empty boxes, and a solitary framed picture of my closest buddy and I at the Law Journal dinner. Although it seemed like mine, it wasn't like home. My phone then buzzed once more. Nathan was the one. Nathan came upon the article. It's kind of you to keep it to yourself. One more bus. Mum and Dad are acting like you're a huge celebrity now. Nathan. They're simply pretending. Aren't they? Do you believe you could assist me in obtaining a loan? Nathan. Apps are having issues. Most likely. You know a few people. The screen glowed dimly in the dingy afternoon light as I gazed at Nathan's letters. For him, every message was exactly right. Somewhat envious. Passive-aggressive. Yet nonetheless able to make a request. Even in the midst of his alleged tough time, he was unable to control himself. He managed to transform my moment into his chance. I didn't answer. Not quite yet. I placed the phone on the table next a partially unopened book-labeled package. In addition to what he stated, the speed at which everything had changed left my head reeling. After reading an item in a city daily, the family that had been ignoring me for years suddenly wanted to see me. Starting with my father. Nathan is now in my messages. What comes next? My mother is phoning while crying like a crocodile and feeling guilty. I approached the window to gaze out at the street. There was a queue of people waiting, talking in the summer heat. While a food truck was parked on the curb, everything inside of me felt uneasy, even though everything was carrying on as usual. As if I were hovering between my former selves. The child who would have given Nathan a tense yes, Let me see what I can accomplish. And the guy I was at last growing into, who understood his value and no longer need their approval. Nevertheless, it was my younger brother, Nathan. Even though I detested it, a part of me still wanted to keep him safe, for the sake of that recollection ingrained in my mind. Not for his sake. When we were 5 and 7 years old, we used to create Lego towns on the living room carpet before disillusionment and partiality set in. I took up the phone again, read his messages once more, and then, almost like a reflex, the family group chat, which I had muted months prior, was checked. It was overflowing with photos from last weekend's launch party, sleek lighting, furniture that was leased, and a catered setting that included mocktails and sliders. In the background is a huge poster with the app's logo. Every picture included, my folks grinning like pleased sponsors. So proud of our boy for pursuing his dreams. Read one caption. Not a single word about me. It's funny because I don't recall seeing any photos of them during my graduation. Once more. My phone buzzed. Nathan, are you there? 2 seconds later. Though. Tell me. Nathan. If you don't want to help, you don't have to ignore me. I gave an eye roll. Traditional. Another name appeared at the top of my screen before I could type anything. A call is coming in. Mum. Naturally. Before responding, I let it ring 3 times. I didn't greet them. I simply let her talk first. She put on the voice she often used when she knew she was wrong but didn't want to say it out. Oh. Honey. She murmured. The article was recently shown to us. How come you didn't inform us? I spoke in a flat tone. It wasn't a huge issue. You said. An uneasy laugh followed a silence. I didn't intend it that way. You know, it's simply, your dad said we should part ways because your brother's event was already scheduled. But you failed to show up. That's what counts. One more pause. What you stated before really touched your father, she continued, attempting to guide the discussion. He mentioned you were unhappy. But he didn't tell me everything. I answered that I was upset. Mum, you've missed every significant event in my life? Everyone. And you choose to celebrate a botched app launch instead of me having an entire row saved for you when I eventually made it. She said. That's not fair. But her voice was no longer sure. We were required by Nathan. I also needed you. I said. You simply failed to notice. Then there's silence on the line. Ian. You have our admiration. Indeed. We are. I've been chatting to your father. We would like to visit your bar. Ceremony for admission. Front row. Even flowers will be brought. I told them not to bother with flowers. This has nothing to do with it. One more pause. She couldn't answer this riddle with a gesture. But I could practically hear her trying to decide what would be sufficient. No more. Nathan reached out. 2. I heard. After a beat. She added. He's having trouble. He's under a lot of strain. You know, you are the only one who could be of assistance to him. It was there. The true cause of the call. I'll guess. Slowly. I said, he wants me to offer him a legal advantage or speak with someone at the firm or one of our clients. She gently said, he just needs a little guidance. A link. Something to maintain the momentum. Yes. I whispered. So I work. Once more. He receives the prize. It's unfair. She said it again. Growing up in your home wasn't either. I didn't hold out for a response. I hung up, put my phone down, and went to the bathroom to spritz my face with water. I glanced at myself in the mirror. I saw no resentful guy. I noticed a weary person, someone who possessed a silent hurt that had solidified into strength over time. And that power, it was no longer going to be given away. Nathan had sent me another message by the time I got back to my phone. You don't have to say yes. Nathan, don't pretend that you're superior to us now. Though, I lingered on the keyboard with my thumbs. I then began typing. Not to him. Though, not quite yet. Rather, I opened my calendar and added a ceremonial event. Confirmed assignment of seats. I wrote a brief email to the clerk's office after that. Subject. List of guests. Notice of update. Hello. For my bar ceremony, I would like to revise the seating arrangements. Only 3 visitor permits will be required. You may keep the first row open. After a moment of staring, I texted my phone a message. Buzzed once more. Nathan was still typing. But I had already decided what I wanted to do, so I didn't open it. And then there was a knock on the door. A steady, purposeful knock. This time, the knock was more forceful. I had the same heaviness in my chest that I normally get when my family is around. I took a dish towel to clean my hands before carefully approaching Nathan, almost expecting to find him standing there with that half-cocked smile he had on his face whenever he was in trouble. But hoping charm would make it go away. It wasn't Nathan. Though, it was my mother, wearing shoes and a blue blouse. She looked a bit too put together for an unexpected visit, holding a manila package to her breast, as if it were delicate. She had brushed her hair back, as she often did when she wanted to appear calm. Her lips formed a gentle, practicing grin, and the same one she wore to church when she wanted everyone to believe that our family was ideal. I stopped by. I hope it's all right. She referred to me as though I were a long-lost relative. I had to see you. I let her in by slightly opening the door. She entered. The boxes are the focus of attention. The floor was piled high with books. The only framed picture on the wall. She said nothing about it. She just surveyed the area as if cataloging the type of life I had created in their absence. Without being asked, she took a seat on the couch's edge and put the envelope on her knees. I would like to speak with you, she said. Talk a lot. Not by hurried phone calls or messages. Since your dad returned home the other day, I've been thinking a lot. I'm still standing, crossed arms. She inhaled deeply and talked without glancing at me. Everything changed with your birth. Our first was you. Both I and your father were afraid. I remember thinking as soon as I held you, even though I had no idea what I was doing, he will become something, not merely intelligent. You've always been powerful and resolute. I remained silent. Nostalgia didn't interest me. I desired the truth. She raised her head. She had watery eyes. I believed you would flourish if we pushed, challenged, and kept you grounded. You did, too. However, I no longer saw you as someone in need of affection at some point, just someone who persevered. And it was the turning point when Nathan appeared. He was quite unusual, sensitive, delicate. We thought we had to keep him safer, encourage him. I chuckled to myself. You handed the entire ladder to him. She winced. I see it now. I know. She moved the envelope a little in my direction and set it on the table between us. What is that? I inquired. We missed everything. Softly, she said. I discovered pictures of your honors in the rear of the file cabinet, copies of your letters of scholarship, the Herald article. I highlighted the portions that people didn't even know after printing it out. Even a brief message from your third-grade teacher is included. Do you recall? Mrs. Hanley. I didn't grab the envelope. She added, in addition, I wrote you a letter rather than an email. An actual one. I reasoned that you could read it if you ever wanted to. However, I won't ask you to be quiet once again. I didn't come here to beg for your forgiveness or to offer Nathan assistance. I won't lie. Though, he's having problems. The app isn't working. He's afraid investors are pulling out. We fear for his life. Slowly. I nodded. And you believed that I may save him once more? No. She shook her head. No more. I'm here to inform you that we don't deserve your assistance because of this. And we will also deserve it if you choose to leave us. She straightened her clothes and got to her feet. Appearing smaller than I had recalled. You've created something amazing, and we didn't witness it. But I'm hoping you'll allow us someday. She began to go towards the door but stopped, her hand resting on the handle. Your ceremony at the bar. We'll take a seat in the rear row if one is available. Otherwise, we'll wait outside to see you leave with that certificate. She didn't say anything more before leaving. And I remained there silently for a long time after the door snapped shut. I finally took a seat and gazed at the envelope. After hovering my fingertips over the flap, I tugged it open, as if she had spent hours selecting what to add. The contents were tidy and well organized. A copy of my letter from the State Scholarship Board was there, along with a picture of myself at the age of 14 smiling wearily while holding up a prize. A red piece of construction paper, folded. When I was 8 years old, I sent my mother a thank you message on Mother's Day. She had suppressed it. A 6-page handwritten message was also enclosed in the mail. I took a while to read it. Rather, I reached for my phone and at last read Nathan's final message. Forget it. Nathan, you have nothing to give me. I returned the type. Mais excellent. As I'm not making an offer, I didn't hold out for a response. The number was blocked by me. Not out of hatred, but because I needed space. He had always found a way to twist my success into a safety net. That was over now. A week later, the bar ceremony arrived. I wore the same navy suit from graduation, except this time it felt different. Like armor. Not just clothing. The ceremony was formal, brief, filled with clapping and proud families. When my name was called, Ian Maxwell admitted to the State Bar Association. I stood tall, walked across the stage, and shook hands with the presiding judge. The applause was loud, but I didn't search for it. As I stepped off stage and walked into the aisle, I spotted them. My parents not in the front row. Not even the middle. They were standing at the very back, behind the last set of chairs near the exit. My dad held a small bouquet. Sunflowers. My mom clutched the Herald, clipping in her hand. Folded and worn like she'd been carrying it every day since she found it. They didn't wave. They didn't call out. They just watched. When the ceremony ended, I walked out through the lobby, ignoring the people, shaking hands and taking photos. I stepped outside into the sharp summer air and let it fill my lungs. I stood alone for a few moments, watching as other families spilled out, laughing and hugging. Then I heard a voice behind me. Counselor. It was Judge Harrow, the man I was set to clerk for. He extended his hand. Impressive work today. Looking forward to having you on board. Thank you, sir, I said, shaking his hand as he turned to leave. He added over his shoulder, You've earned this. Every bit of it. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise. I nodded, his words sinking in deeper than he probably intended. And then slowly, I turned to see my parents standing at a respectful distance, unsure if they were allowed to approach. This time, I gave a small nod. They walked over. My dad held out the bouquet. We didn't know what kind you liked. I took them. I'm not promising anything, I said. My mom nodded. That's okay. We just wanted to be here. I looked down at the sunflowers. Bright, stubborn things. They grew toward the light. No matter what. Let's go get lunch, I said. Just lunch. No speeches. No questions about Nathan. They nodded again. Kie. Careful. We walked toward the car together. Not as a healed family. Not yet. But maybe, just maybe, as something new. And this time, I led the way.